Hi, everybody. I'm back. This is lesson 4-5, Computing with Scientific Notation. This is going to be in two parts today. So you're going to watch part 1 today, and you're going to watch part 2 in the next few days. So these next two lessons are going to be computing with scientific notation. Good news is you get to use your calculator today. Everybody gets to use their calculator. Even if it's in calculator jail, you can come up and get your calculator now. So today, computing with scientific notation. Before we start, though, I want to refresh your memory on how to write things in scientific notation again. If I look at this number, I have 4,302,000. I'd write this in scientific notation by looking at my first few numbers that are actually numbers between 1 and 9. 0 can also be included here because it's sandwiched between two numbers. And I am going to write those numbers. It's supposed to be a 0. And I'm going to make that in between 1 and 10. So to do that, I'm going to put a decimal here. And then take it times 10. Remember, it's always times 10 to some power. So if I put my decimal here, how many spaces is it going to take me to move that decimal to be out of that number? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is what this would look like in scientific notation. All right, so let's look at this next one down below. Notice I have a negative exponent. So if I have a negative exponent, that means that I'm going to move my decimal to the left, and it's going to make a really, really small number. So 291, this is where my decimal is. I'm going to do times 10 to the negative 6. I'm going to move it 6 to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to write them in like that. So today we're going to be dealing with scientific notation again. That's why I'm going over it, because you still have to kind of know what it is. You can't forget about it. It's going to start showing up and keep showing up in our chapters. So first thing I want you to write in your notebook, part A, this is multiplying and dividing scientific notation. So make sure you get that in there. This is part A. This is what I'm doing today. The next day will be part B. So part A, multiplying and dividing scientific notation. Now here's the thing. Scientific notation, like we said, can either be really, really big numbers or really, really small numbers. So numbers so big that your calculator can't handle it, and you aren't going to want to write numbers to the 27th power or to the 24th power. So if we want to divide like super huge numbers or super small numbers, we can do that when it's already in scientific notation and come out with the correct answer. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to take our scientific notation and we're going to do our adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing with our scientific notation format already. So this is how it works. Okay, this is an example of division, so make sure you get that in your notebook. We're going to start with division and go to multiplication next. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to split up. So this says 1.89 times 10 to the 27th divided by 5.97 times 10 to the 24th. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this up like this. Okay, and we're going to worry about this side, and we're going to worry about this side. So first thing I'm going to do, this is for dividing, I'm going to look at my powers of 10. Now the other day we talked about rules with powers and exponents. When you multiply, what happens to your powers? When you divide, what happens to your powers? We did that a few days ago, I think in lesson 4.3. So if I look at 10 to the 27th divided by 10 to the 24th, I'm going to get 10 to the what power? If I divide, what happens to my exponents? I'm going to subtract them. So 27 minus 24 would be to the power of 3. Now my times will stay the same because we know that in scientific notation it's always something times 10 to the third power. Now this is what you can use your calculator for. You're going to do this part on your calculator. It's 1.89 divided by, let's see, 5.97. So 1.89 divided by 5.97. This is what I get. I think I'm in my, hold on, I gotta work on my calculator a second. Let's see, I want to reset. All right. Let's try again. So 1.89, I tried it before and I got a 0. I knew that wasn't right. Divided by 5.97. And this is what I get for an answer. I get 0.31. I'm going to say 7 because if you look on your calculator, it's going to round it up to the 7. The 6 is going to become a 7. If you have stuff like this, let's just only take it out to the third space. All right, so we have scientific notation here. I know that in scientific notation, Now this is part 3 over here. It says you write result in correct scientific notation. I know that in scientific notation this has to be between 1 and 10. And this right now is not between 1 and 10. So what I have to do is I have to rewrite this whole answer to make it the correct scientific notation. Right now this says 0.317 times 10 to the third power. But I have to move my decimal here. If I move my decimal, that's going to change my powers, because think about it. If my answer was going to be moving this 3 times, and that was going to be my answer, and I moved it already, let's say it's here now, how many spaces is my exponent going to be now? It's going to be to the second. So that's the trickiest part of today, is making sure your scientific notation is rewritten in the correct notation. So I have some ways to help you remember that. Okay, so below or somewhere in your notebook, I want you to write, if you move the decimal to the right, you're going to subtract from exponent. So subtract how many spaces that you moved it. Subtract from exponent. Sometimes it might be written higher than 10, so then you might have to move it to the left. And then you would add how many spaces you needed to move it to the exponent. And we'll practice this a little more. Okay? So make sure you have this down. This is probably one of the most important things today. What kind of star is that? All right, good enough. Okay, let's try another one. Let's talk about this one above. So it says 1.8 times 10 to the 14th divided by 4.6 times 10 to the 9th. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on this part. Okay, so I have 10 to the 14th divided by 10 to the 9th. That's going to give me 10 to the 5th power, because I'm just going to subtract my exponents. Always going to be times 10. This is what you get to use your calculator on. So 1.8 divided by 4.6. And this is what it gives me. It gives me 0.391. And I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to go on forever, because your calculator will go on forever. All right, so here's the problem again. I cannot have this because this is not in the correct scientific notation. This has to be between 1 and 10. So to do that, I'm going to do 3.91. Now I moved it a space. Times 10, I moved it 1 to the right. So if I moved it 1 to the right, I'm going to subtract from my exponent. If you go back, if I move to the right, I'm going to subtract from my exponent. So I'm only moved 1 to the right, so now this is going to be 10 to the 4th power. Okay, all right. Let's do this one over here. Okay, so it'll be 10, 8 minus 3 would be 5 times, so 7.56 divided by 3.15 gives me 2.4. This is a lucky one. I'm in correct scientific notation. This is between 1 and 10. I'm good to go. So the answer is 2.4 times 10 to the 5th. I'm going to give you one more, and I want you to try yourself. Okay, so go ahead and figure that out. So it'll be 10 to the 9th times 3.2 divided by 2.1 gives me 1.52, and that's in correct scientific notation. Already, I don't have to change anything. You might come up with one that may have negative exponents. I always want to do 3's and 2's. Let's do something different. Okay, so let's say you have something like this. Then you actually have to do probably keep, change, negative 3 minus negative 6. So it's going to be 10 to the 3rd. So you might come up with negative exponents that you might have to worry about using keep, change for. And then you can do your 3.72 divided by 1.7. and I get 2.189. Oh, is that right? Yep. Times 10 to the third. It's an correct scientific notation for you. So careful. Careful, careful. Let's talk about the next part. The next part is multiplication with scientific notation. Same type of deal we're going to do today. We're going to worry about our powers of 10 first. We're going to worry about our beginning part, and then we're going to rewrite in scientific notation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at these things. Now, if you remember, if you multiply scientific notation, what do you do to the exponents? Okay, you add them. So I know this is going to be 10 to the 29th power, so a super big number, times. Now I'm going to take these two things, and instead of dividing, I'm going to multiply them. 3.1 times 6.42 gives me 19.902. Okay, not in correct scientific notation. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it. So it'll be 1.9902 times 10. Now, if I move my decimal, if I moved it one this way, I moved it one this way, I have to add to the exponent, so it should be 10 to the 30th. Try this one. Try this one. Worry about this part. The hardest part is rewriting it so it's in the correct scientific notation. That is the hardest part. 5.2 times 3.9 is 20.28. Okay, not incorrect, so I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to move it once this way. And if you look back at your notebook, if you move it once to the left, you're going to add one to the exponent, so it should be to the 26th. So make sure that you keep that handy of where we talked about if you add one or subtract one, what happens to the exponent. Make sure you keep that handy somewhere. Try one more by yourself, and then that'll be done for today. Okay, so I'm going to get 10 to the 14th times, and then those two multiply each other, would be 37.653. Okay, not in the correct scientific notation. So I'm going to move it over one space, so it'll be 3.7653 times 10. So if it's 14, I'm going to move it to the left. I'm going to add one to it, so it's going to be to the 15th. And there we go. There we go. We're to part B. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bring your questions, and I will see you in class.